Welcome to Red Hot Topics with Dr. Roni. Tonight's conversation explores what happens when medicine meets meaning, when a cancer diagnosis interrupts life's momentum and demands new understanding of body, mind, and purpose. We're honored to speak with Dr. Cristina Pozo-Kaderman. She is the Senior Psychologist and Director of the Young Adult Program at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. That gives me goosebumps. And she's a faculty member at Harvard Medical School. Her new book was released last Tuesday, and it is called Coping with Cancer in Early Adulthood. And hopefully, oh, you can see it without it disappearing. That's great.
Yes.
And she co-authored it with Saul Wisnia, and it offers a deeply informed and compassionate roadmap for young adults navigating diagnosis, treatment, and the return to everyday life. And yes, I said young adults. So Dr. Roni, you deal with cancer all the time, and it's not just a disease of the body, right?
Body, mind, and spirit. Absolutely. You know, I deal with all three: the body, wherever the cancer is, whatever organ, and a lot of emotions and spirituality, all of it, because you can't isolate one from the other because your body believes what you tell it.
And that's right, because that's what makes this book so essential, because it connects the science of healing with the psychology of endurance and hope. And I'm going through it right now. So I am so excited to welcome you, Dr. Pozo-Kaderman, Dr. Cristina, as I've already
Thank you. That's fine.
given you
Yes.
that label. I've met you last week with the launch of your new book. And so welcome. We're so pleased to have you on Red Hot Topics with Dr. Roni. What inspired you to write the book? And what gap did you hope to fill for this generation of patients, not parents?
Well, that's parents too. Some are parents. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
So actually, you know, I have like three different reasons why I felt strongly about writing the book. So one is really the reason that I work in the field. So I made the decision at a very young age, as I shared with you before, that this was the field I wanted to work in, because as a child, my mom, when she was in her mid-20s, was diagnosed with cancer, and I was a young child. And this was the late 60s, early 70s. And so I watched as she was diagnosed and then recurred several times. And the last surgery was major surgery, and she had a radical neck dissection. So as a child, watching that major change where she had difficulty eating and speaking, and they shaved, you know, part of her hair off, it was something that was traumatic to watch and to experience. And then just as the years went on with her treatments, you know, you just as a child, even then you realize you're the only one who has a parent that's going through something. So there's that sense of isolation, a lot of fear, uncertainty. You wonder, right? Is my mom going to die? Am I going to be without a mom? And so that really stayed with me throughout my childhood and, you know, my teenage years. And if you met me in high school, this is what I said I wanted to do. I should say, and we'll talk more about this later, is that my mom, when diagnosed, and in those years also, but her personality and also in those years, there wasn't that focus on the emotional part of what you're going through, right? Because it was the late 60s and 70s. So I think that obviously had an impact on my choice, because I wanted to be involved in something where you get to talk about your feelings. But my mom really found that it was her faith and her spirituality that did it for her. So, you know, I just remember her very clearly sharing that with me as I was growing up, that was really where she got her way of coping, where she got her strength through her, you know, cancer. And I will say she did survive, which, you know, as she looks at it to this day, is that it was a miracle, because people did not in those years survive with recurrent cancer. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is that I realized myself that there was a gap in terms of the focus on young adults going through cancer. So even though we've gotten a lot better over the last 30 years, now we have the term young adults. And so I've seen where there has been an increased focus in this age range. It is still so often lumped with the peds or with the older adults. And there isn't that recognition from a healthcare professional that the needs are so different. And then the third reason is that there are wonderful books out there written by patients, great books, young adult patients who write about their experiences. But there was really nothing out there written by a mental health professional from that perspective who had experience working in the field for so long. So it's a long answer, but those are the reasons why I felt strongly that this was something that would be, very meaningful, I would hope, and would be helpful to young adults going through this who are often so isolated and, don't know sort of where to go for information.
Powerful. Very, very powerful.
And I hadn't shared with you before about my mom, Siobhan. So yes, there is a part in the book where I talk about that not everybody needs to go speak to a psychologist, psychiatrist, social worker, mental health professional. That's not for everyone. And so I do have a part of the book where I, dedicate that there are other people that have other ways of coping that can be just as healthy and as good for them. There's no one size fits everyone, right?
That's true.
Well, I'm reading this book when I'm at my treatments and I'm in the waiting room. So I haven't got through it yet. So
Okay.
People are probably watching. I'm like, this is the book. Dr. Roni.
Well, maybe they'll get the book. They need to have a book like that in every cancer unit across the country. I've been dealing with cancer for over 50 years. I started as a young pediatric nurse at Yale New Haven Hospital on Hunter 4. And back then, they were just starting to talk to kids about cancer. But I specifically remember it was not a conversation that you have with your children. And I'll never forget the child that I dealt with who had leukemia. And she was a teenager, very, very special teenager on that entire ward because no one knew what to do. Can you imagine being special because nobody knew what to do with you, right? Mm-hmm. So it was this hush, hush, let's not tell her. She's a very fragile teenager. And all she kept asking about, well, why do I have to get all my hair fall out? Why do I have to have the sores in my mouth? And no one was explaining to her. So not explaining to a teenager that the truth of the matter is that you do have cancer and that this is how we're going to treat it. And this is why your hair is falling out. No one was doing that. And the mother wouldn't leave. She wouldn't even go home and take a shower. So what was that telling the child? That was telling the child that my mom is scared to leave me, but nobody will talk to me. And I'll never forget the time. And I'm a young nurse back then. This is 50 years. And I remember specifically, and I'm probably traumatized by it, but I specifically remember that the supervisor came over to me and says, we're going to have you do a double shift tonight and you have a special job. And I was mortified when she said, we're sending this mother home and you have to sleep in the bed with this child, this teenager who was going to have a fit that the mother just left her. And she's probably thinking I'm going to die and my mother left and a stranger sleeping with me. Well, guess what happened? You would never believe what happened. And I don't know what came over me that night. But all I know is that all I have to do is hug this child and just rub her back, massage her head. She had no hair and kept telling her over and over and over again, you are going to be okay. You have something in your body that's trying to hurt you and trying to destroy you. But guess what? It's all about how you think. And if you think that it's going to happen, you're going to have a miserable time. But I'm telling you here, and the reason why I'm with you tonight is to make sure that you know that you're going to be okay, because I'm going to not leave you. And your mom is coming right back. She had to take a shower. She did not leave you. No one was talking to this kid like that. And they're like peeking in the door, like, what is this nurse saying to this child? And I'm telling her the truth in my own way. But we've come a long, long way now. But if I have to say who survives cancer, those who survive cancer have the part in their emotions that I'm going to be okay. I'm emotionally okay. I'm going to beat this thing. I have a spirituality that's going to help me. No one is leaving me alone. That's how you beat it. You don't beat it with sticking needles in somebody with the drip, drip, drip all day and people coming by looking at you and no one's talking to you.
Right.
That's not how you beat it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that even sometimes when the treatments, are not always able to do what you're hoping they'll do, right? It's finding a way to deal with whatever that reality is. So, sometimes as much as you may want to live and survive, which happens, sometimes the treatments don't work, as you just said, and that happens. And then it's figuring out, how do you cope with that? And how do you continue to live your life, whatever life you still have, with purpose and value for what is meaningful to you, as you just said. Yeah. Yeah.
Have a lot of emotional psych therapy, because I can tell you that I've always was successful with that method, emotional psych therapy with the kids. It was the parents that had the problem. The kids would be fine. The parents weren't fine. And whenever the child saw that the parents weren't fine, that made them upset and that made them feel like they were going to lose the battle.
Of course, yeah, because they pick up on the parents' fear and anxiety, of course. Yeah, yeah.
They pick
And
up on the
that's scary
parents'
for kids.
fears, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
That
it's a
happened.
family thing. You can't just isolate the child. You have to talk to the family because
Right? Oh, of
everybody has to be
course.
in sync with body, mind, and spirit.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that if you get treated in pediatrics, so when we talk about young adults, it's 18 and above that we're really talking, and that's sort of like the area. I don't see, younger than 18. It's not the area that I focus on or have been trained in. So, but when you see those, that are 18 and above, it is, really scary for them to go through it. And even for their parents, even when they're in their 20s, it's very, very frightening. And so I do agree with you that it's important to treat the whole family. When you're dealing with pediatric, it's the family centered approach. So that's a major positive, I think, for the 18 or 19-year-old that gets treated in pediatrics, actually, because they bring in the whole family. But if you're 18, 19, 20 and you're getting treated in the adult side, it's very much a patient-centered approach. And we sometimes forget that even though they're older, and it should always be a family-centered approach, because when you get diagnosed, as I shared with my own personal experience, it isn't just the person going through it, the patient, it's the entire family that it impacts. So I so agree with you that you do need to involve all those that are close to the person and find a way to emotionally support them as best as possible. Yeah.
When I was
And it's
18,
very important.
I needed my mommy and daddy.
Of course,
Yeah.
no matter what
I might have been
age.
in university by then or college, but I still needed mommy and daddy. I mean, I remember going home on the bus on the long weekend, that Labor Day long weekend, after they dropped me off at college. Because
Yes,
can you
I
imagine if
know.
I had
Yeah,
cancer at 18?
right.
I would have, I needed my
Right.
mommy like all the
But
time.
But 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds, if they have a mommy still around, often do when they don't feel well, right? And if
But
they
here's
do, I mean, and for some people, it may not even be their biological family, right? It may be the family that they've made or they've chosen, because not everybody, has like that biological family. But
right.
whatever it is that are those people that support you, that are there for you, to have them involved and informed about your care and to offer that support for them, I totally agree. That is very important to do for all patients. Yes.
We had she was 92. She just left my retreat and her daughter was with her. And it was very important for her daughter to be there because the 92-year-old, even though she's 90, the daughter can't come in and take over and say, I'm your daughter, I'm going to make the decisions for you. So we had a session with our psychologist, and I explained to her, this mother's survival is going to depend on how her daughter feel about her making her own decisions at 92. Now, when this daughter came in, it was, my mom is going to do whatever I need for her to do to survive, because I still need my mom. So I said to her, so if you still need your mom, I think you better start listening to your mom about how she feels about you saying that, because she's still well and alive. And she still has her faculties, and she still is going to make her decisions. And if you make the decisions for her, she's not going to survive like you think she is.
Right. Right.
But she
Yeah.
still had her mom. And now her mom is looking for her daughter to help her with the decisions, not to tell her what to do, but to help her with the decisions.
Right.
That took a
Right.
lot of psychotherapy on the daughter's part, but you see what I
Yes.
mean you see what I mean about family oriented centered therapy? So
Of
by the time they
course.
left, it worked. The daughter was taking a deep breath, and she was, okay, I'll let my
Yes.
mom make her own decisions. And they left a happy family.
Yeah, of course. Of course, because you got them to open up communication and for the mom to be able to express what she wants to do. And you're right, she's still alive. So,
Yeah.
by the daughter trying to take over and make all the decisions, in some ways it was treating like the mother like she didn't have a say anymore, or,
Right.
her own feelings. So that was
Exactly.
very powerful what you were able to do and
Yeah.
work with him. Yeah.
She
So
was the patient. I had no choice. She was the patient. And if we're going to help her to survive this cancer, we have to get into the psyche of what she's thinking and the feelings of what she's feeling and why she's making the decision that she's making. And hopefully everyone that love her is going to help her,
Right.
not try to change her because of what they're feeling. It's all about what she's feeling.
and there's the magic word change, because between 18 and 50, 49, that's your young adulthood. I wish I knew that when I was that age. You have identity crises, you have relationship crises, you're worried about your fertility, you're worried about your career and banking enough money for your retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your book doesn't only focus on treatment, it focuses on all these kinds of daily realities.
Right,
That's right.
because you can't really take that away from the person. They're still a person before they
Mm-hmm.
got diagnosed, and that part of their life doesn't go away. Temporarily, things may need to be altered somewhat, and you may need to adjust, and that's what we work with our young adults, right? They may need to perhaps, cut back on how many classes they take, or, take a brief leave of absence from work, or get extra help with, if they have children, picking up kids and, dropping them off. But the reality is that is still their life. So it's not like you get cancer in isolation, you still have a life. And so one of the things we always talk about is that in some ways, your calendar was really full before you ever got diagnosed. Now you got diagnosed, and now it can very quickly become filled with, visits to the cancer center. And it starts to seem, if you look at your calendar, that your days are taking up with, cancer.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we really talk about is, how can you still keep the aspects of your life that are important to you, that you value, and finding that balance as best you can. I think one of the tough things for young adults is that they assume that they can manage it all. And I think that sometimes, particularly if you're under chemo and you're going through chemotherapy, you may not be able to just go from, 6 o'clock in the morning and stay up all night going to a party and then, keep going the next day. So I think one of the toughest things, or, even if you're an older but still young adult, you're used to working all day, taking your kids to activities, then taking care of yourself at night. Now you have a baby and you're up in the middle of the night. So, in that young adult years, there's a lot that can happen, and it takes work to then recognize day to day, how do you cope and still do things that are meaningful and important to you, but that you can't do it all. And that's really hard for young adults to realize because they haven't experienced it as the person who gets diagnosed at 70 or 80. Not minimizing that person at 70, 80, 90. It's still tough, but in a sense, they've had changes in their life that have helped them to sort of realize my energy isn't endless. Cognitively, I may be a little different, and so it does change. Whereas for the young adult, fatigue and that cancer-related fatigue is really tough to cope with. Any of that brain fog is hard. Yes, there are things we can do to help, but a big part of it is learning how to balance all of that. So that's why, you brought up, Siobhan, that is discussed in the book, and it is, because, it's still living your life, but realizing that you may have to take breaks or pause at certain times. And that, I think, is critically important for young adults to find a way to do that without becoming overly frustrated and having unrealistic expectations for themselves.
Do they become
Well,
anxious?
there's that old word saying, it takes a village. And
Yes.
when I started doing cancer treatments, if I couldn't get the daughter or the son, then I'm going to get the cousin or the best friend. But I am going to involve other people in the program of cancer treatments at our retreat. They're not leaving without support because it doesn't work.
Right. Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And the research validates that, social support is critically important, to be able to emotionally deal with what you're going through. Yeah. And again, one of the things that I've talked about before is that recognizing that different people in your life may be able to support you in different ways. So I think we have this notion
Right.
that one person can meet all your needs. I think it's often what we think, even when without cancer, but we meet a partner and we think, oh, this person's supposed to be able to be it for us. And, there may be those people. I think Siobhan's husband may be one of those who does meet them all.
I'm on my own again.
But for most people, that isn't the case. So it's figuring out within the
Right.
people who want to support you, who can provide more very concrete and instrumental support, right? Who can drive you to treatments, who can maybe help with meals, who can maybe give you a gift card for you to go and get a massage when you're up to it, or a gift card for gas, or a gift card for meals. But then there may be other people who feel like they're better suited to give you information and to get you linked up with resources, and maybe, find out about, your retreat, Dr. Roni. And so sort of say, listen, I found out these great resources for you. And that's the type of support that they're able to give. And then other people are obviously able to give more of the emotional support. Some people may be able to do two of those, but I think it's really figuring out what comes easier to people and allowing people to do what comes easiest to them, and not expecting that the person who's really perhaps able to drive you, and that is what's come easiest, is to then also expect them to know everything about the resources out there. It's not realistic. And so we work a lot on that, on getting our young adults to sort of send out like massive emails or text and sort of saying, this is what's happening, maybe having a family member do that for them. And these are the things that I need help with, sign up, as you will, if you're able to. And that way you can get people involved and they're picking what comes easiest to them, right?
Great
Absolutely.
idea.
And the other thing that I really had a tough time with, and I use my psychologist at the retreat a lot for this one, is what about the time where they just can't handle a particular person that's always there? So allowing the person to be very vulnerable and allowing the person to be with the one that can support them the way they want to be supported. And if someone's overwhelming them, that's not in sync what the client or the person is saying, that's more stress than not having someone at all. And we have to be able to pick that up to help them to say, would you like for me to talk to this person? Because I feel like every time you're with this person, not only are your vital signs out of whack, but you're in an emotional mess. And you'd be surprised how valuable that is for that
Sure.
person, that we recognize that person that's with them. And I don't care if it's their spouse. I don't care if it's their best sister or their best friend. You know when someone's not good for someone when they're in a condition of going through cancer therapy or cancer like chemo, where you're already having brain fog and you're already emotional and you're already having upset stomachs and nausea. And now you got to sit next to a person that's making you feel worse. That's a delicate one, but it has to be dealt with if our patient or our friend is going to get better.
Right. And no, I agree with you. I think with our young adults, we often see, that the people that love them very much, again, it's so scary for them that it becomes too difficult to have those people around, right? And so it's about learning. So we often, talk to our young adults who often, because of that stage in life, when they get diagnosed, have to go back perhaps living at home with parents, or the parents may move in with them to help them. And it's still being able to say, I appreciate this, but setting up some boundaries where they can have alone time, maybe have a room where they can close that door and say, not here. Maybe even if the place is very small, which sometimes happens, I'm going to put on my headset and I just want to be left alone. So even with people who are well-meaning, as you just said, sometimes it just doesn't work. And then of course you have, some of our young adults who have made their own families because the families they came from were not supportive, or they weren't, the healthiest perhaps for them. And now they get diagnosed with cancer and people want to jump in and help. And so a lot of what we do is saying, is there a way that you could maybe assign something for them to do so that they feel they're being helpful and they don't have to intrude on you? But if that can't be done, right, and if it's too much, then sometimes you have to just say that boundary. And as the patients always say, they have cancer privilege, and cancer privilege means that if not now, when are you going to be able to say no to things? When are you going to be able to say no to people who really are not helpful?
That's right.
And so they often call it cancer privilege, right? It's like, I am going to, yeah.
I
have
used my cancer privilege several times.
You have, Siobhan? You used it?
You have
Dr. Roni even knows.
You
She's
have
watched
to
me.
use it.
I've set some boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
And it was hard.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
But if not during
we had
cancer,
one
when?
person,
I love that term.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it too. Cancer privilege. You got to have it. You got to use it. You have it. I sent one person, I made him the driver. I said, you know what? We need a lot of things for mom. Your job is to go get them. Whoa, man, we kept him out of the retreat so much. He just went to the store to get one thing. Hey, we just ran out of a light bulb. Can you go get that? He says, I went to the store earlier, but that mother says, you got to keep him out of my room. I'm sorry. And we did.
Right.
We just kept giving him jobs to do, but he was with her, but not talking to her. Because everybody was happy that he wasn't talking. We kept him busy. We didn't throw him out of the retreat. We just kept him busy. And we says, and please don't talk to your mother because she's got a lot to think about. He goes, okay, I'm okay with that. Now see how easy that was? Don't talk to her. Because every time he talked to her, he cried. So there's a rule. Don't talk to her. Go do an errand. Easy stuff. But a lot of families who are not honest like that, they go home and they go downhill because of all that psycho-emotional stuff that no one's dealing with.
How do you deal with that?
And we got to deal with
that somebody's crying all the time because you're sick, and you could be checking out, and they weren't expecting that. They expected you to live like John. He expected me to live past him. Probably why he chose me as mate many years ago. Oh shit, she's a bit younger than me, so likely she's going to out-survive me. So when I'm old, I'll have a nursemaid.
Never know.
Right? No, I'm sure he didn't
know.
think that way.
And that sometimes God has a sense of humor, and what you do with these family members when you get them involved, you sit down and you have fun with them. And you let one cry, you let one laugh, you let one say crazy things. And at the end of the day, you get to know them all. And you know which one of the personalities is going to help the best, which one is going to have to do this job. You will understand your client or your patient by understanding who their family members and their friends are. Because we said it earlier, right, Doc? We said earlier that it takes a village. It
It
takes a
does.
group. You cannot be alone and survive this thing. You just can't do it. I've been doing this for 40 years. And I'm still talking about my teenager. I'm still traumatized by that child who they didn't talk to and sent everybody out of her room and sent her mother home. And I
Yeah.
was the one that had to stay with her all night.
Well, as you
There was
said,
some angel on my side. Look, I didn't know how much you know. I did not know that back then. We're talking a long time ago.
that's what I was
I
just
just
going to
started,
say. Right.
yeah.
In the past, you did not share. So I think that what you did was, ahead of its time in a sense, because in those years, people were not open. There was those years that you wouldn't even say the word cancer. It was the big C. And so,
Yes.
that was very much the way that it was thought of, is that particularly with children, you didn't say anything, no matter that it said cancer center right above the door, right? When they walk in, and if you're a teenager, you read that it says
Right.
cancer center, they are sort of found
Right.
a way to deny that, because it was probably too painful for the family to share it. And and that's why the child still knew something was awfully wrong, as you said, because the mom was so
Right.
scared and they felt they didn't feel well. So they
Yeah.
knew something was going
So
on, and they needed you
they
to be the
knew
one, right? They needed you to be the one to give them like that
to make
information.
magic, to make magic work. Yeah. I get it now. I now today understood what they did 40 years ago. I now know that. But being a young nurse and my first
Sure.
cancer patient, not understanding that they weren't talking to her, the mother was so scared she wouldn't go home and take a shower. It's been a week. Uh, and they had to do something. So they used me,
Yeah.
and it worked out. I
Yeah.
became that child's best friend.
Of
I
course.
became her private duty nurse. And all I did was
Yeah.
stay with her all night and told her the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
Well,
she already
because
knew, by the way. She knew the truth.
of
All I
course,
did was
at some
say what she
level
already knew.
yeah, but then she trusted you because you shared the information and trusted that she would be able to understand it and appreciated the reality of what was going on. So yeah, that makes total sense, and that you did that in those years when it
Mhm.
wasn't done, was really important. That you did that, and hopefully the people around you learned a lot from you at that time.
I don't know. They probably just says this kid loves this nurse, and the nurse is gonna go home with her. I have no
Yes.
idea if there's anything at all. But
Oh
it's
my gosh.
interesting. We did come a long way. Yeah, we've
We
come a
have.
long way. I think that, we now know that you can have a very, very bad day emotionally, and it shows in your vital signs. And so we now make that connection that your emotions and the psychology of how you think with a chronic illness is just as important as we are treating those cells. We treat
Of
those
course.
cells, we treat the mind and the emotions. And that's how this works. And thank God integrative medicine is on board with it all.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I do talk about that in the book. There's a whole section there on integrative medicine. And at Dana-Farber, there's, an entire section that we have for integrative medicine. So we have there acupuncturist and massage therapist, music therapist, expressive arts. We offer
Yes.
all of that there. And most major cancer centers do offer all of that. Chaplaincy is very much involved with our services. So I think that, again, we've come a long way. There is the recognition now that you really need to treat the whole person. You can't just treat the disease. You have to treat everything. And that even for any
Every
specific symptoms, there's so many different things you can do. So, if you have really bad nausea, yes, there's antiemetics that you can use. And you can also do breathing exercises. And there's also, maybe ginger candy that may help you. And then acupuncture can help as well. So it's like there's so much that you can do now to help yourself, so that it's not like you're going through it and you are, without that whole support system. And some people decide to use more and some people decide to use less. But the important thing is that it is available if people are interested and willing to do that. Yep. Very much agree with you on that.
And I don't think we'll ever stop. Siobhan, at the time that you got this, you now see where it's come from, and now you know how to move forward. One of the things that I've talked about this last week with the group that I had is I talked about the fact that stress increases the opportunity to have inflammation and pain in the body. And when you deal with the stress, you'll realize that the inflammation and the pain goes away a lot faster. And so now we're dealing with that. We're saying, okay, why is it that today you have pain and yesterday you didn't? Okay, right? And a lot of times people will identify that in my head, I feel sad. Last night I cried all night. I put the covers over my face and I was balled up okay, all of those 3-4 things that person just said created the pain, but it all started from the stress in the head. You can look at body language and see that someone's having emotional issues by the way they walk and the way they talk and the frown on their face. And if you miss that and don't deal with that, that person can't possibly feel good the next day or that day.
When I was in the hospital, Cristina, since you're at a hospital, you're at a cancer center all the time, so you're seeing patients. It's different than what Dr. Roni's doing. You guys are both seeing patients, cancer patients, but there were a ton of people that came through my room. I was like, I was like the caged lion or something, and they were coming to look at me. But I realized that a lot of them were social workers. They worked at the hospital. They may have been psychologists or psychiatrists. I didn't even know, because I had cancer brain, right? I had that fog. I didn't have a lot of oxygen going in my brain. And so I had all these people coming in, and John even said, I can't come and visit you in the morning because you have too many people coming in. Right. Yeah. But I think it's part of this integrative medicine that you're starting to see. And I don't remember that, say when my dad was in the hospital, when he was dying of leukemia, or even with John. I mean, I do remember there was a pastor in his chemo room, when he was hooked up to chemo, and you could hear the two of them laughing. They were, joking with each other. And there was the guy who played a piano. Yeah. I never went into the chemo. John wouldn't let me in there in the chemo ward. And I listened to the music, but I don't remember anybody talking to me as the spouse of this cancer patient who was, being brought to death's door. Nobody asked me if I needed anything. Nobody gave us any guidance or any resources. We were on our own.
Yeah, it's really changed, thankfully, so much more. Just the field of psychosocial oncology is relatively new. It was started in 1977 at Memorial Sloan Kettering. And so, like, the scientific study and specific training of mental health professionals in psycho-oncology by Jimmy Holland, who I had the honor and privilege to train with. And so it is a relatively new field, because at that time she was really the only one and had then one psychiatrist. So it's grown tremendously from then. And we do recognize that now. And, when our program, and this is what I do encourage, and it says it in the book, but our program actually at Dana-Farber, we have programs for young adults only, right? and then for the parents of our young adults, the partners of our young adults. So we have those because one of the things I noticed is that when I have my, 24-year-old go to a group and the people there are 70 or 80 and they're complaining, my young adults usually would, text me and say, I want to leave this group because yes, it's tough for them, but they had choices. They had a choice of a career. And if they didn't have a career, they made that choice. They had a choice of whether they wanted to have children or not, partners or not. And so they had choices, but I'm in a stage of my life where I'm supposed to have those choices. And I hope I get to be 70, but there's no guarantee. So there is that recognition that this stage in life, and we go back, has different needs. Every stage has different needs. In no way minimizing the older adult. I am not minimizing that. And I'm not in any way saying kids, of course, need a great deal of support. And that's been recognized for a long time. Pediatric oncology always has had a lot of resources. But this stage in life has not always been recognized. And I think that that's the improvement that has been happening in the past 10 years. And the realization that, the 30-year-old who's maybe, just finished treatment and trying to get pregnant or may not be able to because they weren't able to maybe afford actually, fertility treatments. And then has to listen to somebody who's, complaining about something at 80 years of age. It's such a difference that we do try. And a lot of different, places now have that recognition and separate things out. And again, one thing in the book we talk about there is we list the resources for people who don't have the money. And so, sometimes those decisions about fertility need to be made very, very quickly. And, it can be quite expensive. For everyone, but really for women can be very expensive. So there's resources out there, grants. So again, those are just some of the thoughts that come to mind in terms of the unique needs of young adults.
Yes.
We need to close out this episode. I think you guys could talk forever, and I'm sure hopefully you'll meet in person someday because
I hope so.
Close to each
You're just
other.
going to fly over and just come to the retreat. That's just the bottom line here. There's no other way. Just fly on in the summertime when I'm really busy and I got people sleeping on the corners with their beanbag and say hi, but don't forget to wear your white glasses.
Right. So you'll remember me. Yes.
I'll remember.
She'll put you to work.
Yeah, I definitely will. And I am definitely going to have your book in the rooms because I think that is an amazing book. I didn't read it yet. I should have brought it with me, but I'm definitely going to get it because I think it's the best so far that I've read in psychotherapy. It is truly the best. It gets right down to earth and then it starts talking about all the other integrative stuff. And I think that's so important. And it's so important to teach people where we were and look where we are at today. And that unfortunately needs to be taught because not everybody's where we're at. I have to tell you that not there's some people that's still back in the ancient ages that think that they're going to get chemo and die. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's no longer true. And we have to educate people that we live in a different world and that's not anymore.
Yep.
And I'm perfect. I'm a living example of this.
That's right.
When they told me I had breast cancer, I looked at them. John wasn't in the room. It was one of these early mornings when they stood there and said, well, we know exactly that, you have breast cancer. Yeah. Last night you were kind of out of it, but this morning we can tell you have breast cancer. You have 6 years left to live.
Yeah.
I was 60 years old. I'm not even going to get Social Security. That's the first thing in my mind. I won't live long enough to get Social Security check.
But that's not true anymore. That's not true anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. It's not true anymore. It will change the quality of your life. For longevity, there's a lot of things you have to do. But again, the body believes what you tell it. And if you tell your body that it's going to miraculously go away, then you got a lot of work to do. But if you're willing to do the work, I've seen some miracles.
I already feel like a miracle. So I'm, and look at the experts I have available to me. now I can pick up the phone and call Dr. Cristina. You guys will get to meet each other. You probably work
Yes, you can.
together. I think it's amazing. And
Right.
so these are anchors, right? That we have that weren't available probably when your mom, Dr. Cristina, when your mom was going
Right.
through this, she didn't have these resources. She didn't
Yeah.
have for you and a Dr.
Right.
Roni.
No.
I've got,
And that's why you're doing this, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times we don't really know where our future is until something like that happens, right? I had no idea that when I met this young girl 40 years ago that I would be doing a lot of cancer work today. But it's a beginning. And along the way, we stay in our frequency. And if we stay in the right frequency, we really end up doing what we were supposed to do anyway. And I was supposed to be doing this. I met this person 40 years ago, and now here I am still telling the story. And we've come a long way with cancer, a long way. I've been through it all with them, from chemo to radiation to toxic stuff to non-toxic stuff to people falling out, not waking up the next day, to people who are surviving. That's a lot of knowledge along the way. Changing knowledge too. It's been changing fast, rapidly. We can't even keep up. But there are still a lot of people out there still old school, and that's my fear.
Dr. Cristina, do you have any final thoughts before we end
I
this
really
session?
just want to say thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
And while this is a very challenging time for a young adult to get diagnosed with cancer, there's definitely things that can be done, and there are things that can help you through the process. As challenging as it is, and in no way minimizing it, there are ways that you can, help yourself through it and make something difficult, a little easier.
Yes, absolutely. And I never thought that at my age that I would actually see it at an epidemic level. It's just unbelievable. And it's starting very young. I had a 38-year-old, and that's way too young. But now we're starting to see so much of it in such a fast, rapid rate over the last, 10 years or 5 years? I'm not even sure. It's increased like monumental. I can't even believe it. It's not just the toxic food. It's not just the toxic water. It's not just the toxic air. It's the way we live, our emotions, everything is contributing to the toxic load that our cellular cells cannot repair faster than it can do damage. And if we don't turn this around by doing not just psycho-emotional, but we got to do food therapy, we got to do autophagy, we got to do detoxification, we got to do apoptosis, we got to do senescent therapy. It is so much, but if you learn those things and do it, you can live a long life with this. But where does it start? With your book, but also with a lot of education.
Absolutely. So, Coping with Cancer in Early Adulthood, Dr. Cristina Pozo-Kaderman, she's amazing and a great resource for anybody that's coping with cancer. I am not 18 to 49, and I'm reading this book and I'm learning from it, and it's helping my attitude. It really is. Like I said to somebody the other day, I don't feel like I have cancer anymore. But
Yes.
I'm only 4 months into treatment, 4 months since my diagnosis. I probably do. The scans will say I do, but everything else is looking good, and I still have my hair. You got to take the
Body,
little
mind,
wins,
and
right?
spirit.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank
Dr.
you. Have a good
Cristina.
night.
Thank
Thank
you.
All right.
you.
See you.
Thank you
How do I
so
say?
much.
See you on the vineyard.
All right. Bye. Thank you,
I will
Siobhan.
connect you
Anything,
two.
let
I'll make
me
sure you have
know.
phone numbers.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you. This
Bye.
has been Red Hot
Good night.
Topics with
Thank
Dr.
you.
Roni.